Don't know if you watched any of it. The Women's Football World Cup, of course, wrapping up over the weekend. And, hey, it's a good week to be Spanish, or at least some connection to that. New Zealand started with a hiss and a roar, of course, against all odds, winning the first game of the tournament, but never expected to get that far. Go the underdog. I mean, it's great in sport, but does it really work in politics? Joining me on the program now, political commentator from Victoria University in Wellington. He is a lecturer in political studies and director of the Democracy Project, Dr. Bryce Edwards. Kia ora. How are you?
Morena, Andrew, I'm very good. It's about 8 weeks to go until election, and yes, this underdog term is the one that's being used by Labour this week to try and, I guess, spin or keep their supporters motivated.
Is it an admission of defeat, though? I mean, this is kind of like saying, hey, we're on a hiding to nothing. It looks like we're all going down. It's almost like the sort of speech you would expect to hear on election night after you've had a kicking, not 8 weeks before the election.
Indeed. But as we know, underdogs, the term is used because sometimes the underdogs win.
Yeah.
It's this idea that, and I just Googled it just before, actually, and it comes from dog fighting.
Yep.
It was first used in 1886, I think it was. So it refers literally to the dog in the fight that isn't doing very well.
Yeah.
But that dog can still turn around and win. So I guess there's some magic in that. And, we saw that with Labour being the underdog in 2017, when Andrew Little was the top dog, but then gave it away to Jacinda Ardern, and things did turn around. But it's a bit hard when you're the government.
Yeah.
You've been in power for 6 years to say, oh, poor us, we are the underdog, because you've got... You won 50% of the vote.
You're an underdog with an absolute majority in Parliament for the only time within our lifetime. And honestly, at the end of the day, you're still a dog. Other people might make dog-related comments about some of their policies and the way the campaign's been going so far. It's a bit of a dog's breakfast.
Look, it really is. And we saw a lot of policy come out last week or in the last 10 days. And I think it's great. I was quite impressed that Labour were tuning things out.
Yep.
And it only struck me last night, and I suddenly realised they knew that One News poll was coming out, and they tried to really swing that poll by pumping out a lot of policy to try and essentially, get those numbers back up a bit, because they knew that the One News poll was the big one. Political tragics like you and me, Andrew, we take notice of some of these other polls, the Courier ones, the Talbot Mill ones, but it's the One News poll that actually measures things and shapes things. So polls don't actually just reflect what's going on, but they also, in reporting, the state of politics, it gives a bit kind of some cues to people on how to act and how to perceive things, and obviously bad news for Labour in that regard.
Let's look at the numbers, because I think quite significant. Labour below 30%. In some ways, that is that milestone where it's very, very difficult to come back. This is almost like, okay, we've started a downward spiral if you're consistently polling below 30%. I think statistically, even mathematically, very difficult to turn that around in 8 weeks.
Yes, and below 30%, it is kind of an arbitrary figure. And when parties even fall below 40%, that's also a bit of a psychological damage when you're used to being high. And when you hit 50%, that's just amazing. It's what has happened a few times. But going down into the 20s, when you've got a 2 at the start of your number, that is demoralizing. In previous times, it's led to, Simon Bridges being rolled as National Party leader.
Yep.
It normally leads to leadership, replacement discussion. I don't think it's going to be the case this time round.
Yep.
I don't think we're going to see any Jacinda Ardern step in, because frankly, they just don't really have anyone
left in their cabinet. Who's left in their cabinet that hasn't fallen out or got in trouble or rage quit in the last 3 months?
Yeah, I mean, previously there'd been talks about Michael Wood, Kerry Allen
Yeah.
being potential great leaders, and they had a lot of charisma. But of course, now they're out of cabinet due to various misdemeanors, I
Yeah.
should say. But you've also got people like Grant Robertson, David Parker, who would be my picks to take over if the unfortunate happened with Labour. I think.
Surely that's post-election, though.
Well, as I'm saying, if something really bad happened, and it could still happen, Labour's support could still collapse further. Success begets success,
Yeah.
and the opposite.
Yeah,
And you start infighting when your polls go down, and it kind of fuels a further demise.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to talk about that because, perhaps because we're the little country at the bottom of the world, we've got this kind of, yay, the underdog, boxing above our weight on the world stage and all of those metaphors. But does that actually work in politics, or do people just back winners? When you're not only the underdog, but you're the underdog with some pretty severe bite marks, people aren't necessarily going to put money your way.
I think you're right. I mean, people's psychology is a funny thing, and these results, can have all sorts of influence on it. So I think the underdog factor can work. But like I say, when you're in government, it's a bit harder to be that plucky, underdog that's fighting against. It's the David and Goliath thing.
Yeah.
Is Labour David or Goliath? Well, they kind of look a bit more like Goliath when they have the biggest caucus in New Zealand history.
Yeah.
And in some respects, it's national with the small caucus that is the David in this scenario. But I think a lot of swing voters in particular, they take their cues from these polls.
Yep.
And so if you're, a centre voter, you can't quite decide, but you're not that interested in politics, you look at the polls and you see that your fellow citizens are saying, no, we don't really endorse Labour, and you take your cue from that. So whether that's fair or not, that just does have that psychological effect.
I mean, in some ways, the strategy could work to help motivate apathetic voters who may not have got around to it on polling day to say, hey, come on, if you want to keep a Labour government. It's appealing to the party faithful. But given some of the policies recently, I'm not sure that the party faithful will be feeling the love, and the swing voters, they're going to go the way of what looks to be the victor.
Yeah, look, Labour is trying to fight their demise by moving more into the centre mostly. They're not really getting more radical. They're not really motivating their base. A lot of their policies or positioning is kind of national light. And I'm not saying that's wrong or anything. I'm just saying that, when you go hard on vaping, when you start talking about spending a lot more money on roads and so forth, you're sounding a bit more pale
tough
national.
on crime, all that type of stuff. Hey, of course, one of the things about MMP, one of the delightful things about MMP is you can be 30% with a good dance partner and get over the line. Of course, even if Labour is going down, if the disgruntled voters, swing voters from last time go to Pāti Māori, go Greens, the left could still win it, even if at a reduced majority for Labour. Yes,
that's. I think that's an important point, because the Greens are going up. This latest poll had them on 12%, which is very impressive. And Pāti Māori on 3%. It's still not looking that likely, but you're absolutely right. But my feeling is that a lot of those Labour voters aren't just shifting to the left, the Greens, or to Pāti Māori. They're shifting either out of voting or to national, even New Zealand First. And New Zealand First will be a big factor in this if they get over that 5% threshold. We saw them on 4% in this latest poll, and they have. Winston Peters has said, I would not support a Labour-led government. So if you trust that, it means there's no chance. Really, I think if he gets in, there's no chance of a Labour government forming. I just can't see the likelihood of a parliament having enough seats for Labour Greens and Te Pāti Māori if New Zealand First are there.
Yeah, no, hey, interesting times indeed. And of course, this is just a poll. This isn't the election. We have seen in the past dramatic things happen and things change. But certainly if this trajectory continues, it's not looking particularly optimistic for the government. Hey, appreciate your commentary as always, Bryce. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Andrew.